What's up? It's Matt, MPTV. We're still in sunny San Diego. It's not sunny, it's a little later in the night, but I've got somebody here that I met that's from the restaurant space. Josh, tell us who you are, tell them about a little about your background, and let's dig into some in-depth conversation.
I'm a Michelin-rated restaurateur. I've spent 20 plus years in the industry. I've done well in every tier of dining. I had a bar in Hollywood, used to run nightclubs in Hollywood. Moved into the fast casual space with South City Fried Chicken and opened a Michelin-rated concept called Pru and Proper. When the pandemic hit and everything fell apart, I took that as an opportunity to reset and reprioritize my life. And so now instead of just serving my community, I'm trying to serve my industry as well.
So, what I love about your story, and you're an honest, open person. You've written a couple blog posts that I've read, Facebook posts, Instagram out there that talk about kind of the reality slap you had. And for me, I had the same thing when we had our boat business, because I was Monday through Sunday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. We were doing a lot of stuff. And I remember every year telling my wife, next year's the year. And Paige was born in 2002. And it was like 2003 next year, 2004 next year. Then Cole came along 2005, and it was like that. And I look back now, and I'm glad that 2008 economy, when it crashed, it was our chance to get out of the boat business, and I was able to.
You were almost relieved.
Yeah, I was relieved. I told a friend of mine, I'm like, it sucked because me and my dad and my brother each lost about $1 million. I mean, $1 million.
That's a lot of dollars.
And I look back and said it was the best thing ever, because had I kept on that path, that boat dealership would have went to 20 million, 25 million, 4 locations, 5 locations, and I would have turned around and Paige and Cole would have been 17 and 19 years old like they are now, and I'm a mystery. So talk about the post you made about how you kind of realize, oh my gosh, there's a little person at home that maybe I missed the last couple of years.
Oh yeah, so I mean, my career always came first, my entire life. When I met my wife, she gave up her career to help invest in mine, and my plan was simple. I was just going to open another restaurant. Every time I opened a restaurant, the next plan was to just open another restaurant, because that's what you do. And I had never really questioned it. I gotten into multiple tiers of dining simply because I wanted to make sure that I could open as many restaurants I wanted. Depending on where we were, I had the flexibility to choose the right concept for the area. And then the pandemic hit, and everything closed, and I had nothing to do. And I was spending more time at home with my wife than I had spent in the last decade. I had a 2-year-old daughter at home, and we had spent no time together. I was 40 years old with a 2-year-old daughter. I had never put her to bed. I had never given her a bath. And I mean, when she was born, 5 days later, I went back to work, and that was it. And her schedule didn't blend really well with mine. So, I was typically gone before she woke up in the morning, and I was always home after she went to bed. And it wasn't that I didn't love her and I didn't want to be a great father, but I wanted to be a great restaurateur. Yeah. And that's where the immediacy is, right? Like, still to this day, we are 18 months out from the last restaurant closing, and every time my phone rings, my heart sinks. I get this knot in my stomach, because it's always bad news. There's always another fire to put out. The floor drains are flooding the dining room. It's whatever it is. There was always bad news, and I never got out of that. So even when I was with her, I wasn't present. Yeah. So everything closes, and I have time to pause. And I really enjoyed my family, and they really seemed to enjoy me.
Like, hey, we like you.
Which was shocking. I think for everybody involved. And then I began to ask myself, well, what's next and why? And the one thing that I knew more than anything was that I loved my industry. I loved my industry.
The scooters with the radios on,
I know,
baby.
Right? It's so cool. It's very 2021. Yep. I love my industry deeply, and I wanted to be in it, and I wanted to support it. And I saw everyone blaming the pandemic. The pandemic screwed us. Everything was closing because of the pandemic. But when I closed my restaurant, and my restaurant was super successful, we were a multi-million-dollar concept. All of them were. And I was rated like the best fried chicken in LA. The fine dining was Michelin rated. My bar had been there for over 10 years. We didn't have that much gas in the tank. We were very successful on the outside and not very successful internally, and nobody was talking about that. When all of these restaurants closed, nobody was talking about what happened just before COVID.
Yeah.
How much cash did everybody have in the bank? How many hours were they working? What was their revenue model like? And at least for me, I didn't know how unsuccessful I was until the music stopped.
Yeah.
And it was a real realization for me. So I decided to start a conversation. And instead of being like, there's something really wrong with our industry, or, hey man, you really need to check the way your business works, I just came out publicly and said, this is my fault. I did this. Because I had been interviewed countless times before and had never spoken about the issues, had only put forth the good decisions I had made, had never discussed the mistakes. And so I said, it's my fault. I caused the collapse of the restaurant industry, and quite literally me and everyone that exhibited my behavior did. And in making that admission, people came to the table and they wanted to have that conversation, and they were excited because once you've admitted that there's a problem, you can then work towards a solution.
Yeah. And it takes balls to admit that, because when our boat dealership closed in 2008, we were getting out of the business anyways. So I had already went back to consulting. My dad had went part-time. We were exiting within 6 months, but we exited a little quicker.
Yeah.
And honestly, the reason we exited so quick was we had no choice. It was like a lot of restaurants. I heard from a lot of people that, it wasn't that the pandemic closed them. It just showed you were 30 days out from closing anyways.
Right.
Whether it was the pandemic, a blizzard, a fire, whatever, you were 30 days out from closing. But when we closed our boat dealership, to me, it was hard, one, because my dad was in his 60s. It was my mom and dad's retirement. I was in my 30s. I'm like, I can do this shit again 2 or 3 more times, bring it on. But when I looked at it, it was the hard work we put in, but also I had to look in the mirror and say, we were the ones that took $5 million in line of credit instead of the $500,000. We were the ones that carried all this massive debt, that had a 7-acre location, that made a lot of decisions that set us up for one card to hit and go down.
For sure.
And I think that's the toughest part. I said this to a lot of friends. I remember my wife one time, but I was probably the only time as an adult business caused me to cry was when this was all happening. I was like, I don't know what happens. Do I go to jail? Like, if we have all these people we default on, we've got $8 million, I think was what our total exposure was in liabilities. And obviously not those assets.
Right.
And I remember telling my wife, like, I don't know what's next. I don't know how this all works out. And I said, the hard part is I had nobody to talk to.
Right.
A lot of these restaurateurs, like my wife isn't an entrepreneur. She's an amazing mom. So I can't go home to her and have that conversation about the business failing and what do we do? And a lot of us, like me and like you clam up. And you actually did something that most people don't. You came out and you put it on the table.
Well, it was, we had to break the cycle within the industry. And I think that COVID went a long way, despite what I did. COVID went a long way to creating more conversation and more transparency in the industry. But prior to that, no matter how successful I was, I always felt like an idiot. I always felt like everyone was busier than me. Everyone was more profitable than me. And you would talk to other people in the industry. It's not like we didn't see each other. I'd be like, hey man, how's business? And they'd be like, oh my God, it's fucking great. It's the best week, best month, best year I've ever had. And I'm thinking to myself, not for me. And we're like a block away from each other. But they're doing that because they see me busy and they think that I'm busier than they are. And there's this competitive thing.
Projection.
There's no vulnerability. There's no candid conversation taking place. And what an amazing opportunity when, one, we were all sitting at home. Yep. And two, everybody had their pants around their ankles to say, hey, this is the reality of my situation. What was amazing was how many people came to the table. I've done 150 plus interviews at this point. And everyone's had struggles. But there is a replicatable formula for success in this industry. There is that secret recipe, and it's simple. It's not easy, but it's very simple. And that was the big aha moment that came out of it. So that's why I'm willing to talk to anyone that's willing to listen, because anyone can achieve the amazing results that the most successful of us in this industry have achieved. It's about doing the things that I think deep down we all know we should be doing.
So let's shift to what we should be doing, because this is something that I've held near and dear to me. The last couple weeks, my son wanted to get in better shape, so I'd get up at 6 a.m. and run with him. I've been fortunate enough since '08, my kids are 17 and 19 now, so whatever the math is, 11, they were 6, 7, somewhere, that I've always started my days at home with them. I always made a rule, like, unless I'm out of town, I'm not scheduling meetings before 10, because that allows me to mess with Paige and Cole at the breakfast table, to throw Cheerios at them, to have fun. A lot of people skip that. Like, in the entrepreneur business, the hustle, especially the restaurant, it's like, oh my God, I gotta get up, I gotta get on the grind, I gotta check my email, I gotta get on my phone, I gotta get in my car, get to the restaurant, and ignore what's right in front of them and work those long hours. And I think part of the problem is the industry is flooded with people who do not delegate,
right?
Who do not let go and say, you know what, if I work 40 hours in my restaurant or I work 80, the same shit's gonna happen.
For sure. Well, but there's also a lot to be said for where you put your focus. And I think everybody's focused on survival, right? And that's an instinct. And it's when I transition my thought process to saying, this restaurant may close, it may not close. But at the end of the day, there's certain things that I'm not willing to sacrifice in my life. Everything changed.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything changed. And that's when you can put your foot down, and that's when you can set clear boundaries and say, if this restaurant closes, it would be a tragedy, but it won't be the end of my life, and it won't be the end of it's just the end of one chapter.
It's like I heard somebody say the other day, an entrepreneur talked about it. It's like, people don't realize you don't get arrested for not paying your taxes.
Right.
You get arrested for lying and cheating. But if you go out of business and you have a bank loan that goes bad and you have taxes you owe, you don't go to jail. Like, you just start over. And like, there's this thing that bankruptcy in business or personal is the end of your world, and it's like, it's not. I mean, people are committing suicide, people are doing crazy stuff, and that's what, to me, I think is one of the big elephants in the room, is that people think that that's the end all be all, is a success in business. And I told somebody today, I'm like, the most successful person I know in my life is a guy named John Parker. He's not wealthy, he doesn't have a business, he's successful because he's an amazing father, he's an amazing man and husband.
Yeah.
And I look at it, like, when I look at a lot of my friends that are in business that hustle like me and do a lot of stuff, they ignore themselves. Today, we left the conference at 3:45, went to the beach and hung out for 2 hours.
There you go.
Yesterday, we had, do we watch Martha Stewart at the conference and hear what she has to say, or we go to the beach? Go to the beach. I take time because I know that I'm number one. That if Matt Plapp's not mentally healthy, not mentally strong, not focused, I can't help my company, my wife, and my kids. And then the other thing is nutrition. You're an in-shape guy. I work out a lot. Nutrition, exercise. None of my friends that are entrepreneurs or restaurateurs, that they're not in a condition physically.
For sure.
That is sustainable either.
The industry is an endurance sport, so you have to be in the right physical shape to handle it. People used to ask all the time, like people in the industry, they would say, how do you stay in good shape? And I'm like, like everybody knows. Again, it's simple, but it's not easy, right? I make time to work out and I eat right. And it's, again, to get back to those super simple principles, if you just price your menu for profitability, you'll be way better off than most of the other people in the industry. One of the things you advocate for, if you're collecting data from your customers, every customer that walks through the door, you're way more likely to increase customer frequency. These are all really simple things to put into place. If an employee shows up consistently late, fire them. It's as simple as that. Like, these things. You know in your heart that you can't manage someone to the degree that they will self-manage themselves. People are either born with that or they're not. People know to either show up on time, in uniform, ready to work, or they don't. And so either you choose to hire people like that and deal with the ramifications, or you choose to make better choices.
And that's along the same lines. It's a buddy of mine made a similar comment. He's like, I have to choose he likes Mountain Dew. Mm-hmm. I have to choose to walk by the Mountain Dew machine with water and not drink Mountain Dew 5 times a day, because that's what got me 100 pounds overweight my first 5 years in the restaurant business. I have to choose not to eat French fries. I have to choose, like you said, fitness isn't hard, profitability is not hard. There's simple equations, but it's a hard decision to make the right decisions.
And I think it's all rooted in the same thing, especially within this industry. We're nice people, kind of, for the most part. We start out very nice, but at the end of the day, even as nasty as the nastiest restaurateurs are, we have a servant's heart. We like to make people happy. Like, I think that people that are passionate about food become foodies. People that are passionate about people get into the restaurant industry. And I think that's a misconception that's largely made. So we love people and we want to make people happy. So we're unwilling to have hard conversations. Like when you turn to a patron and you say, all of our prices went up by 25% because I can pay my rent, but I can't pay my mortgage. It's not a conversation we're willing to have. You know, you go to the gas station and the prices fluctuate every day. Nobody's running out to apologize to you because it's a variable, it's a variable commodity. Same with everything we do, but the prices are static.
Yep.
And it's because we don't want to have that conversation. We retain employees that are terrible for our business. They could easily be replaced with either somebody better or a tablet. And we choose to retain them because it's easier than having a difficult conversation because we hate to upset people and we hate to disappoint people. And again, the simplicity of just doing what's best for you and your life first and then what's best for your business second, it makes all of the difference in the world. And these aren't platitudes. If you just ask yourself in real time, like the phone rings, it's the restaurant, it's probably an emergency, but I was about to go to the gym. What's best for me in this moment? You know, if you just do that with consistency, you'll make better choices.
Yeah, I told a friend of mine recently, we were talking about that, and I showed him my calendar. And my calendar, there's an appointment on there for working out most days. There's appointments on there when I have to go do stuff with my wife. And I say I treat those the same way I do the highest paying client my company has. It's the same thing. You got to make time for yourself. You got to make time for your loved ones. Otherwise, why are you doing this crap? Why are we working our butts off?
Well, and you bring up a great point when it comes to budgeting time, because something else that I started doing right after the pandemic, it was on my list to do for years because I knew that it was valuable and the greatest entrepreneurs in the world talk about it. But it's important to schedule thinking time.
Oh, yeah.
And to schedule thinking time every day, where all you do is think.
Have you read the book Deep Work? Cal Newport?
Yeah.
I've had 3 breakthroughs in my business the past 12 months from thinking. I don't take my phone many places anymore. Like when I go with my wife and kids, and it cracks my son gets so mad because we'll be in the car and I'm like, I sit in the back, he calls shotgun. I like my wife's SUV in the back, and I got my feet over top the seats, hit him in the face, and he's like, Dad, did you not bring your phone? I'm like, I never brought a phone call. He's like, gosh, you're gonna bug me all night. And it's funny, we go places, but we're at this climbing park down in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. My daughter, her boyfriend up there, my son and wife are on their phones. I didn't have my phone. And Cal Newport's book talks about becoming, I think it's comfortable with boredom.
Yeah.
Because when you're comfortable with boredom, we're not looking at our phone every 5 seconds.
For
and
sure.
You're sitting there, and now you start to think. One of the best things for our business came from that 3 hours at that climbing park, because I had nobody to talk to. And I'm just watching, and I'm like, and your gear starts going. And it's like, wow, what did I do before the phone 15 years ago? What the heck did we sit around and do? And I think that we've lost the ability to be bored.
To just do nothing other than ponder. Because I walk my dog a lot, probably more than my dog likes.
Yeah.
But it's a great opportunity to just get away and just think. And I can't tell you how many times I've been staring at this dog using the bathroom and like,
boom,
something hit.
Yeah.
And it's something totally unrelated. But I mean, what I would tell the people listening, because I feel like it all kind of feels like platitudes and like, oh, it's fine for them, but like that's not really how my life works.
Works for everybody.
It has to, and it can, and it's a choice. If you take time to think and you take time to prioritize yourself, the assumption is that your business will suffer, and it won't. It will flourish.
Oh, it's my business. When I read the book Deep Work, I was actually in Miami, Florida, and a guy got up and it was a mastermind I was at. And there was about 15 of us there, and this guy got up with his ninja hack. And he's like, my ninja hack was I got rid of Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Gmail on my phone. And I don't check them anytime. My phone is basically emergency calls or texts, and occasionally internet. I'm like, I can never do that. Guess what's not on my phone now?
Me neither.
Yeah. And
so it's all on my iPad, but now when I do it, it's work.
It's work, yeah.
Right?
It's not,
like
it's
that's
not
a work
standing.
thing.
And that's what I noticed when I read the book. I caught myself thinking about the number of times I was in line at a restaurant waiting. I'm at a stoplight, grab my phone.
Yep.
And it's like, man, you're constantly training yourself for that. And I think that's a huge element of thought process. If you're a restaurateur, if you're an operator of a business, you're a much higher caliber person than the average person.
Yeah.
You need to think more.
Yeah, especially considering the fact that all of the meaningful work that you will do for your restaurant happens outside of the hours that restaurant is actually open.
Wow.
That's when you get the opportunity to lead. As soon as you clock in, you're managing. You are literally working to control human behavior, whether it is your team or your patrons.
That's deep.
But, I mean, it's just kind of the way it is.
Yeah, that's something you don't think about. That it's the truth. It's kind of like a football player. The minute you're a football player before the game, you can be that. But when the kickoff happens and Tom Brady runs on the field, it's time to play ball.
I used to talk to my team about it all the time, and they're like, what do you do during the day? And I say, I run the company. And they're like, well, what are you doing now? And I say, I'm running the business. And you can't forget that those are two completely separate things. And there are times when the company suffers and the business thrives, and there are times when the business suffers and the company thrives. You've got to run both. And I think we're all very much focused on the one that we like, which is the business, which is the actual restaurant operations. But no restaurateur has ever done their best work in the scullery replacing the dishwasher on a busy service.
Pretty damn true.
It is. It's just, there is this misconception, and I pushed it my entire career, so I am as much to blame as everyone else, that it is respectable to work 80 to 100 hours a week.
Oh yeah, it's the grind.
That's it, you know.
I've got Facebook posts of like, Matt Plapp, it's Sunday at 11 p.m. and I just put in 110 hours. What do you do this week? And
sure.
It's ingrained in us. And then I look back now and I'm like, hey, this week I've put in like 8 hours and it's Wednesday.
Yeah, right? It's, they interviewed Warren Buffett and they were like, how much, do you work? You must be incredibly busy. And he was like, not particularly. And they were like, what do you spend most of your time doing? And he goes, thinking.
Thinking and reading.
That's it, and learning. And we have such an opportunity because there's so many exceptional people in this industry to learn from other people. And with the advent of blogs and podcasts and digital periodicals, we have the opportunity to learn from each other in a way that we've never had before. And there's more transparency and vulnerability than there's ever been before. Everyone's opening the kimono. This is how I do business. This is how I achieve profitability. I interviewed Will Guidara, the best restaurateur in the world. And he explained step by step how he ran his business, how he started it, how he built it, and how he sold it.
Okay, break time. Restaurant owners, you're watching MPTV, so you're obviously interested in increasing your sales and profits. But what if I told you you could eliminate the hope and pray out of your marketing? You could spend money and actually see results. Most marketing starts with attention, like a billboard. The problem is that attention leads nowhere. That's why we created the ROI Engine restaurant program. We take attention and gain huge engagement, whether it's in-store or online. We help you build a database with deep customer information that's comprised of email, cell phone, and birthday. And then we drive them into the restaurant with trackable results. Yes, results you can actually see. If you're interested and want to have a conversation, check out restaurantmarketingthatworks.com. Worst case scenario, you get a lot of great ideas. Now back to the show. That leads into my question I had next. I wanted to ask you, you've done a lot of the podcasts, 150 or so you said?
Yeah, just about.
What's one or two that really stands out to you? Whether it was a moment that came up, whether it was a comment somebody said, or it was the whole podcast? Besides mine, because mine,
yeah, of course,
obviously is gone.
Obviously, probably the highlight of my career. But that's a really good question. I interviewed Brooke Williamson, who owned, I think, 3, 4, 5 restaurants before the pandemic, celebrity chef. And the vulnerability and the candid nature with which she explained her struggles during the pandemic really pulled the veil back on the fact that nobody was safe.
Yeah.
Everybody was suffering. That no matter how busy you were before, it's changed. Johnny Razzone put Nashville hot chicken on the map. He didn't create it. He created a concept inspired by it in a terrible part of town for hot chicken in a strip mall with no parking, with no street-facing frontage. And the guy does 1,000 covers a day. of these hot chicken sandwiches. And it's hot chicken. It's mild as chicken. It's incredibly hot. So this is like a niche of a niche of a niche in a very like inaccessible place. And he built this institution, which is now Popeyes has hot chicken on the menu. And they do because he started this national phenomenon. And I asked him, I said, what's it like to be an overnight success, knowing he had grinded, knowing he had started in a food truck, and the guy is a zealot. He truly believes in the cuisine and didn't want to adopt it. He wanted to elevate it. He wanted to lift it up and expose it to the masses. And the reason he's successful is the reason that most of the most successful restaurants are successful. And it's because he was smart, he was strategic, and he was incredibly passionate. And a lot of us are smart, and a lot of us are passionate, but no one is strategic like he is. That dude was doing 1,000 covers a day for not a year, for not 2 years, for 3 years before he opened his next location.
Wow.
And it's because he had a plan. And meanwhile, I opened my first bar in Hollywood. It was reasonably successful from the outset, and 3 months later, I'm like, where are we opening next? But it's that methodology. It's employing a successful strategy from the beginning. This is what I took away from it. And I think that is the one missing element in every failed concept you see.
Restaurant owners, did you know Matt has free online marketing courses that teach you how to successfully market your restaurant? Email support@mattplapp.com to get access to the courses and a free social media content calendar.
So what's next for Josh? What's on the horizon?
Like I said before, I really do feel like through these interviews, I have managed to figure out what the recipe for repeatable success in the industry is. And I just want to share it at no cost. So as much media as I can do, I just took over as president of the Los Angeles chapter of the California Restaurant Association.
Congratulations, I saw that on LinkedIn.
Thank you, sir. Super excited to host a bunch of special events in Los Angeles around community, around leadership, around learning. And the last thing that I've done is I've decided to put my money where my mouth is. And I've created a case study that I believe can take any restaurant to massive profitability in about 9 weeks.
Wow.
And so anyone that's interested in signing up can sign up at restaurantcasestudy.com.
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 How was that available?
I know.
Where are we at, David? We could have bought that one.
Right. Strategy, my man. But it's incredibly important to me that I'm able to show people, through this case study, that profitability is possible. Because everything I heard growing up was a lie. Restaurants are a low margin business. Not true. That does not need to be the case. Yeah. I can point to dozens of restaurateurs netting 15, 18, 20%. That it's got to be a grind, 80 to 100 hours a week, and that marketing needs to sit on the back burner. And you are living proof that if marketing is front and center, your restaurant will thrive.
I appreciate that. Well, this has been a great interview. You've made this easy. I mean, sometimes I have to drag answers out of it. Maybe it's California because I come out here and Billie Jean has been awesome, and Chef Santiago of Donut Bar, and then of course Sean, our friend at Cali Barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we need to do more California interviews because
you just need to come out, if nothing else, for the weather.
For the weather. So last question. I always ask people this at the very end. Our phones have airplane mode. Mm-hmm. What is your airplane? When you put you on airplane mode, what do? You talked about walking your dog. I know you've got your young child. Is there anything, a hobby or something you do, or something you would suggest that restaurant owners can do when they need to get on airplane mode?
I have a Rogue Assault bike.
Those are terrible.
Which I call the Devil's Tricycle.
You ever seen the stickers? Because we have them at our CrossFit gym where you cover up the end of Assault.
It is a $600 purchase. But if you've ever wanted to focus on nothing other than what you're doing in that moment, it's, you run and people talk about a runner's high, how you zone out. You cannot zone out on this thing.
They're terrible.
All you can do is suffer.
Yep.
And 20 minutes on that thing will make you appreciate every minute you're not on it. So that's what I do when I'm on airplane.
The Rogue assault bike.
Yeah.
And what's comical about those is a lot of people might remember this. The Schwinn made those in the 80s.
Yeah, they did.
And they were the lamest exercise piece of equipment in gyms that nobody used.
Right.
I remember a buddy of mine who was in the exercise equipment. He's like, Matt, you know how many thousands of those I threw away?
Oh, for sure.
And then all of a sudden, the CrossFit gyms across the world start doing assault bikes, and now Rogue's got theirs, and there's all sorts of different ones, and it's like, that's the cool equipment. But yeah, and there's those things, like I tell you, the one I love is doing a Tabata on the bike.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because it's 4 minutes, and it's 20 seconds of pure exhilaration and 10 seconds of rest, and people
and
think,
then 5 minutes of laying on the ground,
exactly.
trying to catch your breath.
Well, cool. Well, I enjoyed our time.
Oh, it was my pleasure, man. It really was. It always is.
I appreciate you coming out.
My pleasure, brother.
Cool. Let's go get some food. That's all we've got. MPTV. See you next episode. We're going to go eat. Adios.